Good morning and welcome to the Quebec and Nunavut Region's Learning Day. My name is Valérie Plourde and I'm the NMC Regional Manager for the Quebec and Nunavut Region. Please note that this event will be recorded and the link will be displayed on our YouTube channel. Also, because of bind-wide, it is possible the speaker will lose her connection and disappear from the screen. If it happens, please let the system reconnect. Please click on your screen to mute your microphone and turn off your video. Learning days are one of many ways that the NMC brings together over 40K managers and inspiring managers across the country. They cover a variety of topics that are important for you. Before we start, I want to acknowledge that I am on the Treaty Grande Paix from 1701 and that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory Kani and Kihaki Mohawk. I invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land on which you sit. It's a pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Vickey Abel. Vickey is a certified mental health first aider and experimented bilingual public speaker, notably on matters of mental hygiene and related topics. Her vision consists of shifting the organizational culture and social norms to adopt a more balanced and approach work-life rather than a current expectation of productivity at all costs. Since 2012, it has been Vickey's crusade to raise awareness on mental health in the workplace and to promote mental hygiene practices as a grassroots endeavor through her engagement in committees, special projects, speaking opportunities, and a one-on-one basis. Her compassion, friendliness, and dynamism are imbibed in everything she does. Today, she will share with you a practical approach to finding balance through mental hygiene practices, especially geared to managers, filled with tips and tricks that can be applied as early as tomorrow. We hope this training session will help you to explore a more balanced and resilient way to achieve your goal in managing your teams in a virtual context. Thank you all for joining this important discussion. Vickey, it's you.
Hi, thank you, Valerie. Thank you for that really nice introduction. So yeah, welcome one and all. Today we'll be talking about mental hygiene and resilience specifically geared for you. You as a human being that happens to be wearing the hat of manager. We will be doing this as a very practical, down-to-earth approach. So stick with me because our journey together will have 3 prongs. The first one, we'll be talking about mental hygiene challenge. Secondly, we'll be talking about the pro tips, literally tips and tricks from the mouth of manager babes. What do they actually do to keep their balance, how to keep a level head? And thirdly, we'll be talking about the pro tips, once again, from the mouth of manager babes, how to manage mental hygiene in their team. All right, so let's start this journey together. First of all, why do I talk about mental hygiene rather than mental health? Well, very simple. Over the course of the last few years, when we talk about mental health, there's this subconscious link that we make to existing conditions, such as chronic stress, anxiety, depression, burnout, etc. That's when we've already gone too far, right? I, on the contrary, would like to start talking and developing a mental hygiene approach, which is a set of preventative measures before we even fall into anxiety, depression, and so on. We've all grown up with more or less the same basic hygiene practices, right? We brush our teeth, we brush our hair. Some of us more disciplined will do the floss. We wash ourselves every day. We change our clothes. As we get older, we learn to shave. And as we get older still, like in my case, we develop a pretty elaborate routine for moisturizing, right? But all this is corporal, right? It's a bodily hygiene ritual designed to prevent certain conditions. We brush our teeth. It's not a cure-all, but it definitely helps avoid easily preventable issues like gum problems and teeth problems, right? Well, what about mentally? None of us grew up, or at least very few of us grew up with this approach to mental sanity or mental cleanliness, right? So this is why we're going to be talking about mental hygiene today. What can we do today to help clean up our minds, help stabilize our emotional states in order to prevent getting into conditions such as chronic stress, anxiety, burnout, etc. Okay? But please understand that practicing hygiene, bodily or mental, it's a choice. Only you can make that choice. You are the only one who can take care of yourself. Nobody else will do it for you. So it's your choice to do it. So we'll be talking about a basic set of preventative measures contributing to resilience. So all in all, we'll be talking about a holistic approach to prevention. But today is all about you. My dears, we'll talk about mental hygiene and resilience, about you. How do you guys do it? Well, right now we're living in a new reality. With the pandemic going on, we're in confinement, a lot of us are working from home. All of a sudden, we find ourselves managing virtual teams. There's new tools, new methods of working, and new styles of management. It's a lot to take in, okay? And it's a lot to manage change. So let's see what we can do. The world is changing, so we have to change with it. So let's break those chains. We're no longer in the 1970s or 80s where work is king and you are just a number and nobody cares about your personal state. That's not how it works anymore. Work is one element out of several elements in your life that you have to balance. Through my interviews with a variety of managers, where they gave me their tips and tricks on how to keep a mental equilibrium, it appeared to me that there seems to be 4 categories that kept on coming up, and we'll explore them together. First one, and I think the most important one, is how they manage to take control of their time. Please keep in mind, working smarter, not longer. Second, how do they do to manage expectations? Expectations, we'll see how we can negotiate things like that. Thirdly, what came out of our discussions is about finding your anchor. What brings you back to your center? Okay, instead of feeling overwhelmed, how do you come back to your center? And it's about self-discipline. And we'll see that together in a few minutes. And finally, everything rests on personal values. What you value will translate into what you prioritize. And what you prioritize will get most of your attention. But it's also about perception. How you perceive what is important, that's what is the key. So let's start with number 1. Oops. Taking control of your time. How many of us seem submerged and we never have enough time? We're running after time. Well, here we go. Work smarter, not longer. Why? Studies show that anything above 50 hours a week of work, you are no longer productive. Busy, but you're no longer productive. So anything above 50 hours of work starts degenerating into possible mistakes, into possible irritation, impatience, and that affects your team. Don't forget, you as a manager also, you take care of a bunch of people. So they look at you as kind of a little star, right? So it's important for you to stay calm and to find a way to control yourself. So work smarter, not longer. And the studies show that it's correct. But how do you do that? Well, let's start with the idea of perception. Life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So pace yourself. I know you want to do everything today, right here, right now, and everybody expects you to do it right now, but that's not reality. Okay, it's not healthy. So learn to pace yourself and compartmentalize, and we'll see how to do that a little bit later. But keep that in mind. How do you do that? How do you work smarter, not longer? Well, these are the tips and tricks that came out. First of all, one of them actually talked to me about creating a morning routine before you reach, before you check your emails or do anything that's related to the outside world. Develop a 5 to 10 minute ritual for you. It's either, I don't know, journaling or just meditating or doing some yoga or just taking a walk or just staying in bed 5 to 10 minutes just to recenter before you get in contact with the outside world. And that phone, my dears, is a life sucker, by the way. Secondly, make to-do lists. If you start putting things down on paper, it gives you a visual. So it puts things into perspective. And from there, you can start prioritizing. And again, when you prioritize, will get your attention. So, but also it puts things into perspective. What tends to get at the bottom of the list? See if those are truly important, if you can delegate those, or you can just ignore altogether. Maybe those are just nice to have, but not essential. Do not accept meetings during lunchtime or after hours. I know for some people it's difficult because you have different people in different time zones, but believe me, they will understand and they will get it. They might grumble a little bit in the beginning when you start turning down meetings at lunchtime or after hours, but don't worry, they'll get on board eventually. Focus on one thing at a time. Those of us who think we're multitaskers and we're that great, no. It just means that you're capable of doing a little bit on many different things, but none of it is done correctly. So learn to compartmentalize. When you're at work, you're at work. When you're at home with your kids, you're at home with your kids. When you're with your husband, you're with your husband or wife. When you're doing your alone time, you're doing your alone time. You're not multitasking. It doesn't work. Another thing is, another thing that came out was really interesting. This manager took the time over the course of a week or two to evaluate the ebb and flow of her job. She determined which periods of the day were the most demanding, the ones in which she was the most solicited. And from there, she designed her schedule and she took her breaks in those periods where they're less important. Okay. Just because you have an 8 to 4 schedule, it doesn't mean that half the time you're not solicited at 6 o'clock at night. Am I right? So start looking at that, your ebb and flow, how your work affects you. So if you do your 8 to 4, but you know that 6 o'clock you're still going to be, answering emails or emergencies or whatnot, maybe you start thinking of taking a 2-hour break in the middle. Something to think about. And also figure out what your circadian rhythm is. Are you more productive in the morning, the afternoon, or in the evening? That will also help you design a schedule that's more suited to you. Let's say you want to incorporate some workout. Maybe you're more of a morning person. Well, you might start thinking of incorporating working out in the morning. And for any other type of activity. Okay, and please limit the clandestine work. And by clandestine, I mean the non-reported work, the after hours type of things, especially if it requires you to send emails to colleagues for them to action the next day. And this is why. That poor person comes in the next morning and already has 2-3 emails of things that they must absorb into their already full workload of that day. So they feel that they're already half a day behind all the time. It's no good for anybody. So limit the after hours work. So these are some of the things that came out in my interviews with other managers to take control of their time. Secondly, let's talk about managing expectations. What are expectations? Expectations are just ideas. They're, I would like it if, but nobody holds a gun to your head. Okay, so how do you manage those things? First of all, adopt a resilient inner dialogue and communication style. It's all about perception. Once again, if you talk to yourself in a way, in a negative way, you will also translate into a behavior reflecting that inner dialogue. I can't, it's too hard, I'm stressed, I'm so tired, this is stupid, this is ridiculous, da-da-dee-da-da-da. Your behavior will eventually reflect that. And same thing when you talk. If you talk in that way, this is stupid, I'm tired, da, 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 well, people are going to perceive that as, yeah, probably, it's true. Again, you're kind of a star, so people look up to you, so be careful how you talk. Keep it positive. Also, managing expectations is about clearly communicating your needs at home and at work. It's okay. Let's say you know that from 2 to 3 on any given day, you have a meeting at home and you have the 3 kids in the house. Please communicate your needs for quiet between 2 and 3. At least everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what to expect. Don't wait for permission to take care of yourself. Please, we're all adults here. So if you feel that you're kind of reaching your top and you're feeling kind of overwhelmed, you need to take a breather, you don't have to wait for permission to go off and take a walk. All you have to do is inform the people that might be affected the most and say, listen, I'm at that point, I'm just gonna need to take a breather, I'm stepping out, I'll be back in about 10 minutes. Everybody's on the same page, everybody knows what to expect. You don't need to ask for permission, please. And ask for help. I know that in the past, asking for help seemed like a sign of weakness, but believe me, it isn't today, especially in these days with the pandemic and all. Ask for help. Find who your allies are, find who are the ones that will listen to you. Please ask for help if you need it, be it for work or just emotional states. You need to talk, you need to vent, just like your employees do, all right? And last but not least, in terms of managing expectations, and this is my favorite, learn to negotiate. For those of us who are people pleasers that say yes to everything, this is what burns us out. So it's okay to say yes, but set your conditions. If somebody asks you to do something, it's okay to say yes. But if you see that the deadlines are too tight or that you already have too much on your plate, it's okay to say yes, but I can do it for you maybe next week. Or if you want me to take this, well, you have to take something off my plate. You see where I'm going with this? On the same token, it's okay to say no. But there's a way to say things. No does not solicit a great reaction. But if you say no, but give other options, that at least helps out a bit. No, I can't do this for you today. However, I don't know, so such and such I know loves to do Excel spreadsheets. Maybe you can ask her. Something of the sort. Okay, yes with conditions, no, but with options. Too bad I don't see your faces, so I don't know if you guys are glazed over or totally into it. I'm not sure, but regardless. The third aspect thing that seemed to come out is the idea of finding your anchor. What can you do, or what is it in your life that makes you feel more centered instead of feeling overwhelmed by any other aspect in your life? So the first thing, and I wrote it down, I found it was really cool. Hold on. Oh yeah, self-discipline. Self-discipline is self-care. Taking care of yourself is taking care of other people in the long run. It might sound counterintuitive, but believe me, if you're feeling okay, you're feeling good, you're feeling strong, you'll be able to care for other people. But if you're running on empty, you have nothing else to give to anybody. So please develop a self-discipline about self-care. And how do you do that? Could be anything. Taking your breaks, drinking more water, eating better, getting enough sleep, getting enough exercise, meditate, whatever works for you, but make it a discipline. Also, take inventory of your energy budget. Much like our money budget, we spend, but we also gain. So what is it in your life that you have to spend energy on? And what is it in your life that brings in energy, that makes you feel good? If you feel you're spending way too much energy and you're not getting much in return, you might want to look at the activities in your life and reevaluate and start finding things to establish more an equilibrium. Find out what belongs to you and what doesn't. When we talk about resilience, we talk about control, having a sense of control. We can't control other people. We can't control other factors, external factors, but we can control certain things and especially ourselves. So find what belongs to you, what is in your realm of control, and the rest, let it go. Let it go. Learn to detach. Shifting your focus to something that brings you joy. How many times are we just suckered into something at work and we just feel overwhelmed? Well, is there something in your life that just the thought of it makes you kind of happy? Some people it's playing with their kids. Some people it's a hobby. Some people it's knowing that this weekend we're going up north to the chalet. Some people it could be anything. But find what brings you joy, because work doesn't give us much in return, but passion fills us up. Know your limits. Okay, don't wait till you fall into despair to take a day off or to take a few hours off. Know your limits and know how to say, you know what, communicate your needs. I need 5-10 minutes to go for a walk. Don't wait till you fall into despair. And finally, find a physical activity to evacuate stress. Stress is pent-up energy. It's cortisol that just is released through your body, but it's not meant to stay there for an eternity. Too much cortisol in the body for too much of a long time starts affecting your immune system. And what happens when your immune system gets weak, you get sick, yeah, nobody wants that, right? So try to find a way to evacuate all that pent-up energy, and how to disarm the cortisol is by releasing dopamine and endorphins. And endorphins is physical activity. So enjoy something, taking a walk, yoga, basketball, whatever. So that's finding your anchor. And finally, let's talk about values. What you value might be different from another person, but it's all about perception. We perceive things to hold a certain value over other things. Okay, so identify what you value in life, because those will eventually become your priorities, and those are the ones that will get most of the attention. Okay, so how do you adopt a positive perception? Well, again, it's the way you talk to yourself. If you perceive an event as negative, as ridiculous, whatever, yeah, you're probably going to see more and more of it. We see what we want to see. But if we start looking at ourselves, other people, events, places, and start focusing on the positive things, you'll see more and more positive things. That's going to help also with your resilience. Instead of looking at yourself as a victim, all of a sudden you see yourself as resilient. You see other things. It might not be perfect, but you might start to see the right stuff, you know? It's okay to make mistakes. Please be patient with yourselves. It's okay to make mistakes. What is it to have grit? Well, resilience is about grit. It's about having the courage to go forward, even though you know you might make mistakes, and also having a healthy attitude towards the idea of excellence. Excellence is not perfection. You will never be perfect. As simple as that. I will never be perfect. Nothing will ever be perfect. The only thing that counts is progression. Are you doing better? Did you learn from the last time? That's all that counts. So practice grit. If you complain, if you have some beef with something, make sure you bring about solutions. Okay, at least it compensates. It sort of balances things out. And in the long run, you know what? We have so many different offices, departments. If you find yourself in a position where the organization's values don't reflect yours and you feel that their values encroach on yours in a negative way, it's okay to say, you know what? I think it's time to go elsewhere. It's not a sign of failure. It's not disloyalty. It's just respecting your values and yourself and your mental well-being. All right. So that's about you, the tips and the tricks for you as a human being and a manager. I hope at least one of those things resonated with you and you can start applying today. And just a side note, I know a lot of managers feel guilty about a lot of things, guilty about not responding in time or whatnot. Please stop feeling guilty. No matter what you do, you would have work to do 24 hours a day. So, you know, whatever you do, just keep that in mind, okay? It doesn't make a difference if you make 50 hours a week, 100 hours a week. There will always be work. So pace yourself. Finally, you as a manager have 3 roles. You have the role of a sponge, insofar as some information that is given to you either from above or from your team is not always necessary to transmit on the other side, right? So a lot of times you're kind of absorbing information and determining whether it's really important to transmit. A second role as a manager is that of a shield. Sometimes you have to protect your team. Sometimes the upper ups have these ideas, the expectations, the nice to haves, but you know your employees and your team the best. And if you can see, if you know that what they're expecting is absolutely out of the question, you have to be the shield and say, you know what, turn around and rethink your things because my team cannot absorb that. And finally, another role that you have is that of a striker. Sometimes people in your team need a little bit of extra attention, and sometimes you need to take action, okay? And we'll look at that. But what is the key to building mental hygiene within a team is building relationships with them. How do you build a relationship with your team? Getting to know them. I understand that some of you managers, especially maybe on an operational environment, you have a lot of people under you. I get it. Try to get to know them one-on-one. How do you do that? You check in with your team, you know, daily if you can, but once a week, or bilaterals seem to be popular. And especially these day and age, if you can use video chatting tools or even the phone, it's better to establish a personal connection because you hear the tone of voice. It's not just words on a screen, you know. Clearly communicate when you are available. Gone are the days of, here's my open door. We don't see each other anymore. So clearly communicate when you're available to talk with your employees. Provide recognition. We talked today about isolation. Okay, a lot of people are working from home, but they're alone as well. And some of them feel isolated. Well, one of the things you can do is provide recognition, meaning go get them. You know, identify them, listen. Congratulations, Lucy, I saw you did this and this yesterday. Kudos to you. Or simply, let's say you know somebody's kind of struggling, you need an opinion on something, you can call them and say, listen, I know you're good at such and such thing. I need your opinion on something. Make them feel like they're part of a team. Go get them, recognize them. And again, this idea of perception. We perceive normally management as the top of a pyramid, right? It's the top and then the team kind of is underneath. Well, there's a new way of looking at things, especially in teleworking circumstances, where the manager is at the center of the team rather than at the top. So that makes a manager more of a coordinator of some sorts, where people, where the team goes to them, where they need something, and the manager kind of tries to make links. And they get to know everybody on the same basis, but everybody works together. I don't know if that visual or that approach will work for you, but again, nobody has a hard and set fast rules and how to navigate this current situation in the world. So it's up to you to start looking at things, try things, see what works for you. And when in doubt, give them a shout. Your team is an extension of you. So if you don't know exactly how to go about something, how they would prefer being addressed or whatnot, give them a shout. Talk to them. They are the extension of you. Set the example, however. Stay calm and positive, but realistic, because again, you're kind of like a star. So people look at you, your team looks at you for guidance. So stay calm, and they will most likely stay calm. Be an available listener. Oh, please, this is your number one. Your number one attribute is be a good listener. Even if it's just to hear them vent. Sometimes it just feels good to let it out. So be a good listener. Trust your employees. Micromanagement is not exactly a welcome management style in this day and age. So have confidence in your employees, trust them. Be flexible. Know that there is no longer one size fits all solution, especially these days. So be flexible in your accommodations of people. Okay. And what you are not is a therapist. Yes, you could be a good listener, but you're not there to be a therapist or to help them with their loneliness. You can help them with their isolation issues, but their loneliness, that's up to them to take care of that. However, you can provide information and resources that are available, like the Employee Assistance Program, etc. But basically keep in mind that the greatest tragedy is indifference. So be there for them, listen to them, and also you set an example. So I think that was pretty much it in terms of tips and tricks. So now I'm going to leave it to you guys. If you have any questions, anything like that, please sign, and I'll do my best to answer, okay?
Thank you, Vicky. That was a wonderful presentation. We will now take participant question. You can ask a question at any time by clicking on the icon of the person with their hand up, located in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Before we start taking questions, Vicky, I'd like to ask you a question myself. What do you do with employees suffering from isolation and loneliness, as probably some of management have experienced with their employee in this very particular time? Do you have any tricks or suggestions?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's important to understand the difference between isolation and loneliness. So the first and foremost, is to talk to them, figure out where they are, what's going on with them. That's the important part of getting to know them, getting to know their personal situations sometimes. So get to know them, talk with them. Let's say they're not the most, vocal. Maybe they're not the ones that are going to open the avenues, but perhaps you notice maybe in different meetings that they're rather quiet. Well, take that and contact them directly. Keep an open mind. Say, listen, I'm just checking in. I just noticed you're a little quiet, or maybe, just say, is there anything wrong? What's going on? Just touching base. It may take 2-3 times, okay? It may take a few tries, but eventually they usually open up. But once they open up, determine if it's just that they feel isolated or they feel lonely, because isolation is an access problem. That means they have a hard time accessing people or places, or they feel unrecognized somehow. So that is something you can action as a manager. But if it's loneliness, that's emotional. So you can try to co-create solutions to maybe limit the loneliness, but in the end, they might need to do some extra steps on their own. But as a manager, you can also provide resources in order to help with the emotional component. So it's one of those things you have to determine, is it isolation, which is a lack of access and recognition, or is it a more emotional content?
Very interesting. Thank you, Vicky. We got a question from a participant here. I feel like I need to do some kind of energy tracker. Is there a tool that you can share?
Energy tracker, I'm sure you can Google it, but there's one that I saw in resilience training. It's 4 components. So you literally note down the activities in your life, one that bring you energy because you enjoy doing it, or activities that you would bring you joy, but you don't find time to do them. Okay, so those are 2 things to keep in mind. But then there's the other side. What are the activities in your life that drain your energy, that you have to spend your energy on? And also, what are the activities that you may be really good at, but you really hate doing? Because that, even though you're good at something, doesn't mean you enjoy it, and that ends up draining your energy. So when you start really making an inventory of these 4 categories, I find having that visual is like making a to-do list. I start being able to visualize what is it I can start incorporating more of, and what I can start perhaps letting go of, or sort of stop incorporating in my life a little bit. But maybe it's a visual, but these 4 categories are going to help you make an inventory of what's actually going on in your life. I don't know if that helps, but it's, to me, everything, if it's visual, it just puts things into perspective immediately.
Vicky, I really like the part where you said it's not because you're good at something that you like it. Thank you very much. It resonates with me very much so. I have another question for you. It's all nice and dandy, but how do we apply all this to a demanding operational environment? Because, Vicky, these days it has been kind of crazy for most managers with all this transition. So how do you apply this on operational context?
That is a very good question, Valerie. Basically, most of my career is spent in operations, so I know how demanding it is. And thankfully, I met with quite a few managers in an operational environment. Most of them, they come up with the same things. First of all, they have to take their breaks. They schedule it in. If it's in your schedule, if it's in your plan or your agenda, you're most likely to do it. Because they also know in operations is 24/7. So even if you work 24/7, you're still going to have more work to do. So there's no point in draining yourself out for a job. It's just a job. So yeah, one of the things came up is absolutely take their breaks, even though they think they're overwhelmed. Secondly, find a way to evacuate the stress. And third, a lot of it is about scheduling for the operational managers. It's a lot about scheduling. But in terms of managing a team in an operational context, one of them came up with really great ideas. They were saying that one Friday a month, they have wellness day. So everybody during that day has a certain amount of time can do something for their sort of mental well-being. It's either having a little cafe clutch, so just discussion. It's also online. They have an actual sort of online meet and greet, so they can vent and talk about things. So it's a very interesting approach that she implemented. So it's not always just pent up energy, so once a month, there's a wellness day. It's usually a Friday. So it's just everything kind of comes out and they share stories and they share tips and tricks on how they are able to go through the day, So operations, yeah, it's a very specific thing, but operations, the key to operations is slow down. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And please take your breaks. We don't need you burning out.
Vickey, thank you so much. I just want to emphasize what you just said, this idea of wellness on Friday. I love this idea. Just so you know, here at the NMC, we do a mental wellness check at every meeting we're having every week, actually. So I love this idea of doing it every Friday, but why not to do it every meeting you're having with your team? Just a suggestion here. Vickey, we have another question here for you. Any tips to change the mood of a team or a group that is not very positive? Would you happen to have something in mind? And we know people are going through a tough time these days, and sometimes that can affect a whole group. What do we do in that case, Vickey?
That's a very, very good question. I think Natalie gave a presentation last week, I believe, and her go-to is always communicate, talk with the people, talk with your team. It's always open lines of communication. I will add to that. First of all, as a manager, people look up to you. You set the tone. So look at the way you express yourself. How do you communicate? Do you stay calm? Do you bring more positive notes? Do you stay realistic but positive? You kind of set the tone for the team. That being said, I understand that the team has its own personalities, and some people, they tend to have their own inner dialogue, shall we say, and they drag themselves down. And by dragging themselves down, they drag everybody else around them down. It's possible and it's okay. In that respect, I would say one of the roles as a manager is that of a striker. So identify the person or people that seem to be struggling and try to go get them. Personally, with curiosity rather than reprimand, of course, and try to talk to them and co-create solutions with them. But again, the whole thing is communication. Get to know your people. Why are they like that? Most people are not negative just for fun, So go get them, go talk to them gently, be curious, try to co-create solutions. But I think that would be a great approach to start with. And if you see it's much more serious and what's within your control, once again, you might want to gently give them some resources.
Vickey, you're so pin on when you said nobody likes to be negative. And I think And as managers, it's not always easy to remember that when we're stuck in those kind of difficult situations, but thank you. Yeah, I think you're quite right on this matter. Vicky, we have another question here. A challenge working in the virtual environment is wanting to respect my team work-life balance. I can set my own office hour, but also need to understand that their needs at home may also now be different, and they don't always want to share personal details. Any suggestion on how to approach this? This is a very interesting question, Vicky, and I'm looking forward to get your response on this matter.
That is a very good question. Oh, wow. Well, okay. You got to respect people's wishes. That's first and foremost. Now, as long as they are not exhibiting issues, shall we say, or you can't detect that there's something that's going on, or that their productivity is affected, or their mood is affected, well then, you know what, it's their prerogative to keep their reserve. That's fine. However, when you see that there is a difference, something's happening, you have to communicate with them. You have to determine what it is the problem. And after a while, if they don't want to talk to you, they're going to have to say something. If they don't want to tell you exactly what's going on in their lives, that's their prerogative, but they need to give you something in order for you to be able to be helpful to them, to co-create solutions for them, you know? So yeah, it's a very good question, because it's walking a tightrope, right? You got to respect the person's wishes, but on the other hand, if it's their personal lives, personal setups starts affecting their work, well, it ends up affecting you and your team, right? So there has to be a little bit of a give and take here. But I don't know, I would start with that, just gently prodding and see where that goes.
Vicky, one thing that you have brought several times now is this idea of co-creating solution. I love this idea. I know sometimes it's not always easy and we have to be very creative, but bottom line, co-creating a solution where there's a win-win situation is probably the ideal way to deal with those kind of situations. Thank you for sharing. Vicky, we have a question here. How do you approach doing a wellness check at a team meeting? I will share the way that we do it at the NMC, but I would like you to maybe share if you think of something as well. During our NMC meeting, our dear Pauline, who usually runs the meetings for us, she will do a roundtable and asking each of us how we are doing. Just a basic question, and we're just usually telling what has been going on for us, personal life, or is any project where we may have on the personal side. And we don't necessarily have to say something. We can just say, oh, things are going fine, or we can share a bit more. So it's really up to the person, but at least we have systematically this question to start the meeting with. So about you, Vicky, how would you recommend doing this idea of a wellness checkup at a meeting or every Friday, for example?
Well, I know that last year our department signed up for the Not Myself Today campaign. And that is basically a one-year program where the Not Myself program provides all kinds of tips and tools. It's online. And among them is exactly that, some topics of conversations, like icebreakers, perhaps, in meetings. How do you broach the subject of mental hygiene, mental wellness, mental health in a work context? And there are certain, like, one question. You literally go on the website and you're just like, okay, well, that's a good question. Let's broach that. And you explore the topic together. So that's one program that seems to be helpful in many departments. Or you can use the same sort of format without signing up necessarily to the program. But like you said, Valerie, it takes creativity. It takes a lot of creativity because there's nothing set hard and fast these days. Mental hygiene, mental wellness, and all that is relatively new, right? So that's one thing I can propose. The roundtable approach I find is fantastic. The only thing with that, I would caution, get to know your team. Okay, some people love to discuss their current state of mind and emotions, which is okay, but when it starts taking over the meeting, it starts also dragging everybody down. You know, so get to know your team. If it's something that you see is possible with a team that's more perhaps able to keep control of their emotions and whatnot, by all means, go for it. It might even inspire each other. But again, get to know your team. If you know that everybody's struggling, already down and depressed, maybe go on a one-on-one approach for a while.
I like the idea, Vicky, of maybe doing the one-on-one approach if the group thing doesn't work. Good tips. Another question for you, Vicky. What to do with employees whose job is essential services, but they don't feel ready to go on site?
That is an excellent question. And I have a perfect story for that. One of the managers I interviewed is exactly in that situation. Her team, the work that they perform is essentially on site. They have to go. They have no choice. That's their work. However, given the circumstances, not everybody is okay with that. Not everybody feels safe to go on site, you know, and especially, you know, with the worries about getting sick and whatnot. And one of her employees was particularly anxious about the situation. So it started off, again, the communication was very clear. The employee was very clear and adamant that she was not comfortable with that. So in the beginning, she started with offering the 699 leave because it's COVID related and whatnot. So, okay, 699. But the person cannot stay in 699 eternally. The person has to come back and start working at some point. So what the manager did, which was brilliant, she communicated with the employee and she said, listen, give me a little bit to work with. I propose that you just simply go to the office, go on site, even if it's just 5-10 minutes, see how things run, see the measures that are in place, and see how you feel once you're there. Okay, maybe it's gonna make you realize that everything is okay. You know, there's social distancing, there's masks, there's Purell, everything is set in place for things to be safe. Well, lo and behold, the employee did take the manager's advice. She did go visit the office spaces, rather reluctantly, but she did it because the manager showed an openness, and she did, and she realized that, okay, it's not so bad. So she ended up gradually returning to her work and to the office space, and now she's okay. So, like Valerie said, we have to be very creative these days, but we also have to be flexible and compassionate. There's no one size fits all solution these days, okay? So get to know your person. So in this case, the manager, she felt, okay, she's anxious, but the more you stay away from what causes you anxiety, the more you're going to get anxious about it. So she offered a very simple, very soft solution, and see, it kind of worked. Well, it did work out in the long run. So it's about co-creating and compassion and flexibility.
Oh, Vicky, I just enjoy when you said it's no longer one size fits all, especially in those very specific times. This can no longer apply. Creativity is the key word, according to me, these days. We must be creative to find different way to do things, approach things differently. So absolutely, thank you, Vickey. We're gonna take probably a last question here. Using EAP, somebody here wants to know, how would someone ask for this type of help in particular? I have found that using EAP system got me touch with a general counselor, but the counselor has not really offered any type of strategy talking about today, all of which have been quite helpful. Well, it's not necessarily a question here. I guess it's just more a comment, but do you have anything you'd like to add on this, Vickey, or we can take a next question too, since we have a few more minutes?
Well, the EAP, they're therapists, right? And therapists are human beings like us. Sometimes we click, sometimes we don't. When you meet with a therapist, it's usually a good idea to communicate what you're looking for, what you need. Perhaps that person doesn't have that style that's going to meet what you're expecting. You know, it's about communicating your expectations and your needs and finding which one clicks with you. But that being said, cognitive therapy especially, is to try to make you realize how to go about certain things. They're not there necessarily to outline an action plan for you. So yeah, that's pretty much what I would say to that. But thank you kindly, though. It was a great comment.
Vickey, I wish we could have keep on going with this conversation with you. This is very helpful, even for me as a manager that I was before with a large team. I really enjoyed this conversation, but really, unfortunately, this is all the time we have for question. The information and tool that Vickey shared with us today will certainly be helpful in navigating these period of continual adaptation for you and your team. It will hopefully help keep your resilience in this difficult time. I would like to thank all the participants for joining us today. Thank you to Vickey, the NMC team, and the member of the Learning Steering Committee who for helping to coordinate this event. We hope you will take part of next National Learning Day, which will take place on February 23rd and will focus on virtual work. There's many more virtual conversation planned in the upcoming month. I would strongly encourage you to follow us on Twitter at NMC_CNG and Facebook to read our newsletter for all the updates and information on how to register. Until then, be well and have a great day. See you next time.
Thank you, Valerie. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.